Hello and good morning, everyone. I would like to thank, I would like to welcome all the attendees, my colleagues, Mr. Sabin Joshi, Managing Director of ACIE, and Mr. Tara Bhatt, the Star Tutor for SAT, to this webinar session titled Understanding SAT. Without wasting any time, I would like to begin this session. For the first part of this session, I would like to request Mr. Sabin Joshi, Managing Director of ACIE, to say a few words about ACIE. Over to you, Sabin sir.
Thank you, Sushant. First, let me welcome all the students for this webinar. Just to give you a very quick perspective, ACI is an education consultancy in Nepal, which is certified and approved by the Ministry of Education. We provide various services to our students, from guidance counseling, study abroad counseling, test preparations for tests such as GMAT, GRE, SAT, TOEFL, and IELTS. We also help our students with their visa and documentation for the study abroad requirements as well. We work and represent many universities across the world, and we work directly and indirectly with many top-notch universities as well. And we also work with students to help them to get enrolled into Ivy League colleges as well. Of the few countries that we work with, predominantly we work with the students for countries such as the US, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and we've also started counseling students for India as well. We are also working with a little over 15 schools and colleges in Nepal, providing them the guidance counseling services so that they can start working on this study abroad dream at least 1 or 2 years before they actually graduate. So with this, I just wanted to welcome all the students again, and hopefully you guys will benefit a lot from this session. If you have any, we will really encourage you guys to ask questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to write on the question question box, which is on the right hand side of the screen, and hopefully we will be able to do justice to this 1 hour that we'll be spending with you. Thank you, everyone, and over to you, Sushant.
Thank you, Sabin sir, for the short and very informative introduction on ACIE. Okay, now why this session? The reason behind we have organized this session is to give a brief introduction or understanding on what SAT is about. As we've realized, there are lots of confusions about SAT among students. We're trying to ensure that through this webinar, our students get complete understanding on SAT. Our Star Tutor will also go through some smart ways of solving problems. SAT is not only about hard work, it is also about smart work. And yes, this session is also very important because we will be learning few very important but critical tips and tricks. So what are we going to cover in this session? Yes, as I mentioned earlier, we're definitely going to talk about what SAT is, why SAT, how to solve problems on the SAT, including tips and tricks, how to improve your score on SAT, and how to prepare more effectively for the SAT. So these are the topics that will be covered in today's session. Now, let's have a introduction tutor. Okay, Tara sir, it's an honor to introduce you. Tara sir is our GMAT, GRE, and SAT coach. He's a top-ranked SAT, GMAT, and GRE coach with more than 98% five-star reviews. He's got more than 15 years of experience in training clients in 16 different countries. He's been featured in the Chicago Tribune, CNN Chicago, and Chicago Voyage magazine, and he has been ranked as #1 coach by Yelp Chicago for GMAT, GRE, and SAT. So that's a huge introduction. Tara sir, next slide. Okay, now these are few screenshots on his ranking by Yelp Chicago. The first screenshot is on SAT. So Yelp Chicago says he's the #1 tutor. Even for GMAT, you can look at the second screenshot, and you can look at the third screenshot. So for all SAT, GMAT, and GRE, he has been ranked as the #1 tutor by Yelp Chicago. And Below that, I mean, if you look at number two is My Guru, and again, Tara sir used to work for My Guru before he started his own tutoring agency. Okay, now let me go through a few of the testimonials. You can view a lot of testimonials in his website, but if you want to view more, you can always log on to the startutor.com. Now, the first testimonial, Deborah says, the family regret not to meet Tara sir a year ago. If they had met him before, the score would have been definitely achieved a year ago. Nevertheless, they're very, very happy to meet him. And the second testimonial, Alex says it's his tips and tricks that brought into a lot of confidence in him. Now, these are only two testimonials in this slide, but there are lots and lots of testimonials even for Tara sir. You can always log on to thestartutor.com and look at those testimonials. Okay, now he's our he's our second instructor. His name is Kanchan Joshi. So Kanchan sir will be guiding our students to refresh math formula and all the concept. And he's been in this field for last 2 years. He's been in the teaching field for last 2 years. He's also an experienced tutor. Okay. After the introduction, I would like to hand over this session to our star tutor, Tara Bhatt. Tara sir, over to you.
Thank you very much, Susanji, and good morning, everyone. Well, Susanji already gave you a brief introduction on my services and what I have achieved there and on my website and everything. And if you are interested, you can always visit my website, www.thestartutor.com, and read a lot about me, or you can just Google the Star Tutor. And I will not waste any time here talking about myself, because I will only cover things that are actually useful to you. So to give you some perspective, I will tell you why I do this. Why did I become a standardized test coach, especially for the SAT, GRE, and GMAT? And I will also, a lot of people ask me in my interviews and also in general, how do I compete with test prep companies that have at least 100 tutors? And I'm the only tutor in my business. How do I compete with them and still maintain my #1 rank? So I will tell you a little bit about that, and I'll also tell you my experience with Nepalese test prep companies when I first came over to Nepal from the US. And if you're curious, I actually live in Kathmandu right now, and I expect to be here for at least 1 year. And due to the lockdown and everything, maybe it will extend to another 18 months or so. Okay, so first of all, why do I do this? Actually, before I was a standardized test coach, I used to be a research scientist, and I was on my 3rd year of PhD at University of Chicago. And as I was tutoring part-time, everyone unanimously agreed that I was made for this job, and I would be doing justice to this line of work if I actually continue full-time in this field. So I listened to them, and I had a lot of good time training students and helping them get into their dream school. So, and with my genetic research, I was not changing the world as fast as I wanted to. So I decided to be a full-time standardized test coach since 2012. Before that, I was a part-time tutor, but since then, this is the only thing I've been doing. And as Susanji mentioned, I have primarily worked in the United States, Boston and Chicago to be specific. And after that, I work with clients in 16 different countries now. And during these days, obviously, the online tutoring is a new norm. So I've been actually offering my services worldwide to almost every time zone as much as I can manage. Okay, now let me tell you a little bit about how I maintain my #1 ranking without actually having any partner or any employee or anyone to help. And if I have to give you a short answer in few words, it's because I care. If you care about your clients, you come up with a lot of ideas to help them. Yes, obviously, I'm a business, we are running a business, so money is important, but it will always be secondary. So caring about your clients and students is always the first step. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my experience in Nepal. And when I first came over a few years ago, I wanted to assess the test prep and companies and coaching centers and see how they are doing and what I can add to this field in order to help students more. And one thing I found consistently was that the test prep companies designed their courses to help students who are unmotivated, who don't have self-discipline, who need to be told what to do and what homework to do, what books to read, what videos to watch, and so on. But there are also students who are self-motivated, who can read the books, watch the videos on their own, and who can study 5-6 hours a day without anyone telling them what to do. And there are students who obviously look for a high score, and in the context of SAT, 30, 50 or higher, and they want to apply to top 20 universities, and for them the coaching centers were not very helpful. So I decided to break that trend and start a new trend that offers value rather than engagement. Yes, anyone can engage you and then tell you to do the homework and read a book, but we want to design a course, and we have designed the course that incorporates material for everyone, whether you are unmotivated and lack discipline, or you are self-disciplined, highly motivated individual who needs a great value from our classes. And if you are aiming for, let's say, 1400 plus score, we make sure we have a curriculum that is right for you. Without further ado, I will actually start my introduction to the SAT. Now, before I say anything, starting today, I want you to do your own research. In the US, we have this short form called DYOR, do your own research. It's not because I cannot tell you everything about the SAT, I can, but I would rather you do your own research. Just start with Googling what is the SAT, what is the format of the SAT, and that will help you cultivate a habit of searching on your own. You cannot rely on the instructor for everything, no matter where you take the classes, because there's so much to tell you. We cannot tell you everything, even in a matter of 100 hours. Eventually, it will be your habit that will take you to where you deserve and where you aim to be. Okay, but I'll be very brief. SAT is a standardized test that is accepted by the universities in the US, and these days even outside of the US. It's a test. The primary ingredient of the SAT test is math and English, but it's not really testing your math and English abilities. If it was, then students who have taken math classes would get a significant advantage. They don't, and you'll notice in a second. It costs about $50 USD, and it's valid for 5 years. Okay, why do the universities need the SAT? Because they need a standardized measurement to assess who is fit for the university and who is not. And there are so many applicants, and popular universities such as Harvard University get at least 20,000 applications per year. So they definitely cannot look at the complete application for everyone, right? So they have to look, they have someone to filter out the applicants first. Okay, so that's all I'll say for now about why we need the SAT. The format is really simple. 2 sections primarily. The third section is optional. It's an essay section, and even within the 2 sections, you'll have subsections. In the verbal section, you'll have reading and writing and language. And in the math section, you'll have a calculator section, no calculator section. Some of you probably already know all this, and the whole test is about 3.5 hours. The score is between 200 and 800. That does not include your score from the essay. The essay is graded separately. So your total score for both math and verbal will be 1600. Okay, now let's talk about tips and tricks, because anyone can tell you about the SAT. You can read articles and blogs and even the official website and whatnot. Okay, so in my training, I always start with teaching you what the test expects from you and what is the test testing, because without knowing the test, it's really fruitless to do the practice test, read the material, take even a practice organized mock test and whatnot. So first, the most important thing to do is understand the test. So let's put things in perspective. Why do you go to a university? Eventually your goal is to find a job or be self-employed, right? And what does the job industry look for? Someone who is productive. Specifically, they are looking for someone who is fast, careful, and focused, and persistent, for obvious reasons, because they want their business and companies to do well. So since the Job market is looking for someone who is fast, careful, and persistent. The universities who are affiliated with the market will look for the same thing. And obviously, College Board is affiliated with the university, so the university will tell them what kind of questions to prepare, right? So the SAT, the College Board will make sure that the SAT tests your speed, your amount, the amount of carefulness and focus you have, and your persistence. So how should we train ourselves to fit their expectations? We should always first sharpen our X, meaning if they are looking for speed, we should work on our reading speed, right? And all the coaching centers that I didn't never mention that they should read the passages, answer the questions, but you know, if you have looked at the practices, you will realize how little time you have to answer. So reading speed is very, very important, and especially in Nepal, because English is not our first language. Most of our, including mine, most of our speed of our reading is not that great. Okay, so not details in the, okay, we don't have time for details today, but speed reading, I can't emphasize enough how important it is. Math fundamentals, you know, probably need no explanation for that, and grammar and punctuation and sentence structure and whatnot. Okay. Also, in my training, one thing different that I do than other test prep companies and coaching centers is that I encourage you to take care of yourself. I actually have one full hour of lecturing on how to take care of yourself, and I have written an article about it, which is soon going on my blog and also on a website called Medium. And in my article, I talk about 5 poisons of test prep in the context of taking care of yourself: short attention span and poor focus, overthinking and anxiety, fatigue, poor endurance, insomnia, sleep deprivation, and procrastination. If you have any of these bad habits, it will cancel all the hard work that you will do throughout the preparation. So make sure you take care of yourself. But luckily, even if you have had these bad habits for many months or even years, there are antidotes. So you can practice mindfulness meditation, exercise, stretching, yoga, whatever you prefer, breathing exercises, digital fasting. I know the first 3 are probably a part of some of your lifestyles, but digital fasting is, the lack of digital fasting is many people's problem these days. You know, people are always on social media, on the phone, or even playing Ludo, whatever they are into. So if you are serious about your SAT preparation, at least 2-3 times a week, you should spend many hours without technology. Obviously, you know, if it's a very urgent technology, you know, you can definitely definitely continue to use that, but anything that is not absolutely necessary, you should fast from that for occasionally. And obviously sleep habits. Okay. I also compile a lot of studies on a Google Doc and share that with my students. The studies that are extremely helpful to your lifestyle and to your test prep journey. But you know, you don't have to read everything that I offer, but I want to make sure you have all the resources that you need. And if you are taking a break and you want to take a break with something fun, but that's something that will also help you with the test prep, so you can check out these studies. Some of them are your brain repeats what you learned during the day. Okay. When you sleep. Learning a new language resets your brain to a more efficient state. Spending time around greenery improves your performance. Unfortunately, that's not an option these days for most people, but you know, it's good to know, right? It doesn't hurt knowing any of these information. Chewing gum before the test relieves anxiety. If you are really nervous going into the test center, maybe chew gum doesn't hurt, right? There's nothing to lose. I also tell you how to take breaks because I get asked these questions very often. Should I study for 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, or 8 hours in a row? So I will tell you what to do. You know, again, these numbers are based on years of experimentation and research from my own with my own test prep clients. Endurance training, because it's a long test. I want to train you for the marathon. If you're running a 40-kilometer marathon in a month, you want to make sure that you run that distance many times before the actual race. You don't want to go into the race not knowing that you can run that distance. Okay, so endurance training is also very important. Now, all of these things are in the context of taking care of yourself. How do you take care of yourself to optimize your performance on the actual test day? Okay. As I said before, studying hard will not guarantee success, and knowing math and English also does not guarantee success. You have to, that's why I believe in holistic approach to test preparation. Undoing bad habits, some people have a habit of being afraid of everything, even if they say a scary looking geometry figure, they get intimidated. They are afraid of making mistakes. So I'll make sure to help you undo all of these bad habits. And also, I will show you when to use the mathematical tools in the right places. Sometimes the best way to do a problem is the algebraic method. Sometimes the best way is something else, counting or mental math or logic. Sometimes math will not help you at all. You will have to use logic, sometimes common sense, sometimes even guessing. Okay. All right. So with that said, I hope these tips and tricks help you or inspire you to take care of yourself and have a different attitude towards the SAT test. I know it's a long and enduring experience, but it doesn't have to be scary. So first step is to remove all the fear and believe that you can do it, and then with that the job is already easier. Okay. All right, so that's it for tips and tricks. Now we will start a pop quiz. There's no pressure to get the right answer. If you do, it's great. Congratulations in advance. But you are just getting started. Some of you may not even know what the test format of the SAT is. So don't worry. This is just a warm-up exercise. We will not know what answer you picked. We just see your average. We just see the percent of answers that each person picked. Each percent of picked answer for each answer choice. So nobody knows what your answer is. Try your best. We will give you some quizzes just as a warm up. Now I'll hand the mic over to Susanti.
Thank you, Tara sir. Now this part of our presentation is something I really like. This is very interesting. So we'll be showing some questions in the screen, and all the attendees will be given 2 minutes to look at those questions and solve. Then we will see how many of you got it right. And from our star tutor, Tara sir, we'll learn how to solve those questions in a smart way. Okay, Tara sir, the questions, please. Okay, so here we go, our first question. So you're given 2 minutes to read the questions properly and solve it. Okay, your time starts now. Okay, thank you all of you. Your time's up. Now, whatever you think the right answer is, please take it. If you think the answer is A, please take A. If you think the answer is B, please take B. If you think the answer is C, please take C. If you think the answer is D, please take D. Now there is a small suggestion. Please make your screen small. I mean, maximizing your screen, you may not be able to take the answers properly. So just make it small.
So you can actually press the escape key on the top left of your keyboard to exit the full screen mode.
I can see everyone's participating. Thank you so much, all of you. I mean, we've been collecting the responses. All of you have given the answers. Okay, thank you. Okay, now let me see what your answers are. Thank you everyone for responding. So 6% of you think it's A, 29% of you think it's B, 12% of you think it's C, and 53% of you think it's D. Now let's know what is the correct answer from Tara sir, and let's learn some smart ways to solve this problem. Over to you, Tara sir.
Thank you very much. Actually, I want to congratulate you first because more than half of you got this answer right. Now, let me also tell you that on the actual test, you will not have 2 minutes. You will have little over 1 minute and 20 seconds for each question. But for questions such as this one, you will have less than a minute. Why? Because later you will have questions that refer to charts and graphs and really long word problems. So they will take you more than 2 minutes. So to compensate for that, you will get maybe 45 seconds on average to solve this problem. We were generous today because you are just getting started and we didn't want to give you too much pressure. So we gave you 2 minutes. But there's a way. What if I tell you there's a way to do this problem in as little as 10 seconds? Obviously, you need some training before being able to do that. But why don't I show you the 10-second method, and then I will explain what the details of that method. So what I do is, if there's no number given in the problem, well, 30% is not a number, it's a ratio or fraction, whatever you want to call it, and 2018 is not a number, it's a year. So I pick my own number, I multiply by 1.3, I will explain that, and then I multiply by 0.7. And if you already know this trick, good for you, you will benefit a lot from it. So that gives me, and if it's a calculator section, I will multiply 1.3 with 0.7 on my calculator. If it's not a calc section, if I usually have my multiples memorized, I know 30 times 7 is 91 off the top of my head without even having to do any calculation. So 90.91 times 100 is 91. Okay, I can do all of this in 10 seconds. Okay, now, why am I doing this? Because, well, I cannot go on too much detail today, but those of you who know percent, if you increase the price by 30%, you are paying 130% of the old price. And if you are decreasing the price by 30%, you are paying 70% of the price. So the decimal equivalent of 70% is 0.7, and decimal equivalent of 130%, let me write that down, is 1.3. Okay, so you can directly punch 100 times 1.3 times 0.7 on the calculator. This was actually on the calc section. If this comes up in a no calc section, you can easily multiply 13 with 7 and move the decimal places. Again, if you don't understand the details, that's okay, because we're just getting started. You probably need a class or two on fundamentals of decimals and fractions and percents. So, but yeah, great job, everyone. More than half correct. Hopefully this explanation makes sense. So my job today is to show you alternative methods that will actually help you save time on easier problems such as this one, and have all the time left for harder questions that will take 2+ minutes. Okay, so now I will erase this and select the next question and hand over the mic to Susan sir again. Okay, Susan sir. Question
Thank
two.
you so much, Tara sir. Now we've got another question. Similarly, we again allowing all our attenders 2 minutes to go through it and solve it. After that, we're going to show you the answers. So time starts now. Thank you, everyone. Your time's up. Again, please tick on to the right answer, whatever you think the answer is. And I would like to request all the attendees, if you've got any questions, if you want to ask anything, you can always write into the chat box. It's below the pane. You can always ask questions. We're definitely going to have a question and answer session in the end. But if there's anything you want to know, you can always ask us in between as well. Yes, we've got the response now. Let's see the answers. Okay. 11% of you think it's A, 11% of you think it's B, 16% of you think it's C, and 63% of you think it's D. Over to you, Tara sir.
Thank you, Susansi. Again, great job, everyone. D is the correct answer. And this is a medium difficulty level question. So the question before that was a little on the easier side. This is medium. We haven't chosen any extremely difficult question today because we're not trying to test your knowledge. We're just trying to help you warm up and inspire you to do things on your own and do some of your own research at home. So by the way, you will not get 2 minutes on the test. We were just giving you some extra time just to get adjusted if you haven't done any math in a long time. So for this, maybe you'll get a minute max, because for the questions like the previous one, you would get 45 seconds. For this, maybe a minute. And for the questions that come later, as I said, charts and graph, you need more than a minute and a half, up to 2 minutes. So the one way to do this problem is by long division, right? So you divide x squared minus 2x minus 5 by x minus 3. Okay, and just like division with numbers, you can x goes into x squared, x times, and subtract and whatnot. But that's not how I do teach algebra and everything, but I really encourage my students to follow a method called numeric substitution. Numeric substitution. What do I mean by that? If the value of x is irrelevant, or regardless of what value you pick, you get the same answer, then you can replace x with any value that you want to, and you still get the same answer. So in this case, let's pick x equals to 1. I discourage you to pick 0 because 0 can do strange things sometimes. So you can pick any other number. Let's pick x equals to 1, and now this becomes 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 5 over, yeah, this is easy, right? I don't have to explain this to anyone. And what does that give you? 1 minus 7, that's minus 6 over minus 2 is 3. So when you pick x equals to 1, your expression gets a value of 3. Now all you have to do is you have to test for answer options A, B, C, and D, and see which of the 4 gives you the value. So again, this is simple math. So if you plug in x equals to 1 here, you'll get 1 minus 5 plus 10, 6, and you get this is unimportant. So but the correct answer is D. So let's just test that. 1 plus 1 minus 2 over minus 2, and 2 over minus 2. Most of you know that it's equals to 1. 1 plus 1 plus 1, 3. So 3 is the right answer. It's D. So numeric substitution actually saves you a lot of time. In at least out of all the questions on the SAT, maybe you can do this for about 10 questions, and you can answer the question in half as much time. So this method will save you a lot of time. But again, great job everyone. Whether you did it by algebra or some other method, you got the right answer. So I'm happy with your performance so far. Okay, now I will go to the next slide. And Susan sir, do you have the next poll ready already?
Tara says it's ready. Okay, now we've got a thought pop quiz. Again, you're allowed 2 minutes to go through it and solve it. Your time starts now. Thank you everyone for your time. Let's see. Please click on the right answer as usual. If you think that whatever you think the answer A, B, C, or D. And again, my humble request to everyone, if you've got any question, you can always ask us. You can type it in the chat box and send it to us. We're getting responses from all of you. Thank you. Thank you so much for participating in this pop quiz. Okay, let me see what you've got. 7% of you think the answer is A, 33% of you think the answer is B, 27% of you think the answer is C, and 33% of you think the answer is D. Over to you, Tara sir, again.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Yeah, you guys did not do as well on this question, but that's okay. This is a scary looking volume problem, so I don't blame you. So number one rule, remember, do not get intimidated. So one thing you can do, even if you don't know the answer, you can easily remove all the bad answers, right? Oh, well, I mean, you don't know what answer is bad yet, but let's start. So if you just find even if you don't know the volume of the cone, that's okay. You can find the volume of the cylinder, right? This is one thing that I often preach and almost brainwash my students to do something. I have it written in capital letters in my notes. And in case you guys are wondering, I am writing with an electric notepad. I've been using this for 5 years now. And I also have a mouse pen. It's just like an electronic pen that can be used to write on my electronic notebook. And if I hook this to my computer, it can transmit everything that I'm writing on my pad. So this is what makes online tutoring very, very not only possible but also great. Okay, so if you're ever curious about, we'll discuss that at the end. But let me focus on this problem. So even if you don't know the volume of the cone, you can at least find the volume of the cylinder. That will be pi r square h. Hopefully, most of you know this. And if you don't, this will be provided on the on your exam question sheet. And that's what, if you enter this on your calculator, you will get actually 785.4. So you know that just the cylinder is 785. So you can actually remove A and B, because of course the silo is has a volume that's more than just the cylinder. So we have a 50% chance of getting it right, even if you cannot do anything. But if you don't remember the volume of the cone, there's a quick way to remember it. So look at this figure here. The cone looks like 1/3 of the cylinder of the same height, right? So just remember that. That's one way to memorize the formula. Okay, one way to not forget the formula. So since the cone looks like it's 1/3 of the cylinder, the volume of this cone is 1/3 pi r square. Now, what I just showed you is not a very professional or technical way of deriving the formula, but this works. Just to remember, okay? Whatever works. We don't have to be technical all the time. I just want to do everything that will help you remember and memorize things. Okay, so if this is 1/3 and this is also 1/3 of the cylinder, okay, with height, cone with height 5 feet. When you put them together, you'll have a hypothetical cone that has a height of 10 feet, right? 5 feet here, 5 feet here. So that's a cone with a height of 10 feet and obviously the same radius. So now we have a cylinder. Okay, so we have one cylinder and a third of the cylinder with the same height. So you can find the volume of the cylinder and multiply by 1 and 1/3. And 1 and 1/3, by the way, is also 4/3 or 1.33 if that's what you prefer. So just multiply the volume of the cylinder by 1.33 or 4/3. That will give you D. Okay, so I said a lot of things, but if you're taking the exam and if you see this, immediately look at the cylinder first. Cylinder has a height of 10 feet, and then there are two cones 5 feet each. So together, that's a imaginary cone of height 10 feet. So we have a cylinder and a cone with height 10 feet and the same radius, and you just add one cylinder and 1/3 of a cylinder and get the answer. That's the quickest way to do this problem. There are other ways, but in the interest of time, I will not show you other ways. I'm trying my best to teach you the best ways to do some of these problems, and hopefully this is helping. Okay, now we will retire from the math section and do some English questions. Now, I did not include any reading because we don't have time to make you read the passage and whatnot, but I chose a question from a writing and language section in which you read a sentence and you try to edit the sentence. If you think the sentence is wrong, the underlined portion is wrong, and people who have taken the practices, you know what I'm talking about. So the underlined portion here is the word allows. So depending on whether you want to change it or not, you can choose A or any of the remaining answers. Okay. All right. So over to Susan, sir. You can start the poll now.
Yes, again, you're allowed for 2 minutes. Please go through the questions carefully. Your
For
time
this
starts
one,
now.
actually, 1 minute may be more than enough, but if you have already designated 2 minutes, that's fine. You get less than 1 minute for this question on the actual test, actually.
Okay, fine. So what I'll do is I'll designate exactly 1 minute. Your time starts now. Thank you, everyone. Your 1 minute's up. Let me get the poll. We're really grateful to all the attendees because everyone's been participating in all the polls so actively. Thank you so much. Once again, a gentle reminder, if there's any questions regarding SAT, please type in the chat box. We are very, very willing to answer all your questions. So we got all the answers now. Let's see the result. So 39% of you think the answer is A, 17% of you think the answer is B, 39% again if you think it's C, and 6% of you think it's D. Now, Tara sir.
Okay. Not bad actually. So a little less than half of you, about 2/5 of you got the right answer, but not bad at all. The correct answer is, well, before I tell you the correct answer, let me write a sentence on the screen that most of you have been hearing all your life. Ram eats rice, right? Okay, well, this is so often used that Ram is probably overweight by now. Okay, now Ram eats rice is a correct sentence, but if you say Ram eats rice, this is incorrect, right? Even if you are just learning English, which you are not, you have been learning English for a long time, but even people who have just been learning English for 6 months, they will know the correct form is eats, not eat, because Ram is a singular subject and eats is a singular verb. Now this sounds contrary because with the S, the verb becomes singular, with the S, the subject becomes plural. It's opposite. So singular subject has to match with singular verb, right? Everyone knows that. But you may be wondering, people who did not get the right answer may be wondering, lives allows, well, that doesn't make sense. Lives allow, right? That sounds better because lives are plural. Allow is also plural. Actually, the correct answer is A. Okay, so this, although this sounds better and right, allows is the correct form. And why is that the case? Because lives is actually not the subject of the verb allow. Okay, if you read carefully, call an ambassador, the shape of a skilled trumpet player's lips allows. What is allowing for playing a wide range of notes? Is it the lips? No, it's the shape. Now, how do you know? There are three nouns here. Shape is a noun. It can work as a subject. Trumpet is a noun. It can also act as a subject. And lips are also noun that can also act as a subject. So how do we decide which of the three is the subject? And there is a trick actually in English. Anything after the preposition is useless. After the preposition is not part of the subject. Your subject should be before the preposition. Okay. So before the preposition, we have shape. Okay, so shape is the subject of this sentence. Shape is singular, so the verb should also be singular. So shape allows, not shape allow. You can even actually ignore all of this. You can scratch that on your, or mentally scratch this, and you can say, call an ambassador. The shape allows for playing a wide range of notes. Okay, that's it. All right, let's move on. If you have any questions about any questions in particular, we can always discuss that at the end if time permits. But for now, let's move on to the next question.
Okay, thank you, Tara sir. Thank you so much for the tips and tricks. So we've got the last question for our pop quiz, all of you. So again, I'm launching the poll. I'm sorry. So here you got the question. Okay, now your time's up. So there was a slight error. I'm really sorry. So the poll has already been there. You've already, most of you've already answered the question. So there was a slight technical error. I would like to share the answers, share the polls with you. So none of you think it was A. 67% of you think it was B. 17% of you think it was C, and 17% of you think it was D. So Tara sir, over to you now.
So for A, it was 0%, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. So the actual answer is A, but don't worry, everyone will make some mistakes, and since English is not our first language, even I had a hard time with the English system when I took my ACT test. I got a perfect score in the math section, but not a perfect score in the English section. So this is actually area of trouble for many people, who versus whom. But there is a trick. If you learn that, you will never make this mistake again. And I repeat, never. Then I learned this trick from a friend actually, and after taking my test, okay, so it was late for me, and I still, maybe I got these questions right some other way, but the trick is he, him. Okay, I will explain. So whenever you see a who and whom problem, whatever it is, who or whom, replace that with he and him. Okay. And if he makes sense, the answer is who. If him makes sense, the answer is whom. And there are other rules, whom cannot be before a preposition, and so on, so on. There are, we will cover all that in our Excel classes, but this is the best trick I will learn for who versus whom problem. Now let's read the problem with he, and let's read the sentence with him. Okay. Squanto, a Pawtuxet tribe member. From he, they learned about planting. That doesn't sound very right. From he, they learned. From him, they learned about planting. Yes, that sounds right. That sounds right. From him, they learned about planting. That's a almost perfect grammatical structure. Not 100% perfect, but that makes sense. From him, they learned about planting crops. So if that's more sensible, him is more sensible, the answer is home. Okay, and the best way to remember that is M and M. Him and whom, they both end in M. Okay, him is whom, he is who. If it's a plural, you can do they and them instead of he and him. Okay, so hopefully you will never make this mistake again. Replace the word who and whom with he and him, whatever makes sense, choose the corresponding answer. There's also which is only used for non-personal or non-living subjects. And so C and D are wrong already. Between A and B, him is the better answer. Okay, with that, we are all done with our questions. Hopefully that was not too tiring for you, and I hope you are inspired to do more work and hopefully take a practice test soon. And even if you don't take a practice test, you can start researching about the SAT. And the way things are right now internationally, the online prep is the new norm, definitely. I've been getting more and more requests worldwide to teach SAT classes online. The GRE and GMAT tests have also started allowing you to take the test from home. I don't know when SAT or if they will do that, but if the lockdown continues for many months, I will not be surprised if even the SAT allows online exam. They will obviously, make sure that there's no cheating involved. They will do everything to prevent cheating, but maybe they're working on it. So I guess with the end of the pop quiz session, I will try to wrap this up with some words on how we approach our classes. So we will not give you too many details in the interest of time, but this is the proper structure for our we follow with our potential students. We always start with a mock exam and assess the level of the student. Okay. Because if you go to a doctor, the first step is diagnosis. What is it? What is the problem with it, and how we can correct that? Then we provide a detailed introduction on the SAT. We did some of the introduction today, and hopefully that kind of change your attitude about the test. It's a long journey. It can be tiring, but it's if you are disciplined and persistent, you will get the results you want. So we want to make sure you understand the test well and you don't have any misconception about the test that can happen when you're not given proper information. So one thing that I do, that I also found when I visited test prep centers and coaching centers in Kathmandu is that, and this was a big shock for me, especially after living in the United States for 12 years. When I asked people questions, they would always give me an answer, even when they did not know what they were talking about. They would give me some answers just to look smart and just to not look dumb in front of potential customers. So I mean, at ACI, we completely refrain from that. I know not everyone can have answers to everything. So, for example, I am an expert in test preparation, but I don't know much about at the admission process. So we have experts in that area. If someone asks me about admissions to Harvard, and let's say if you ask me how important are recommendations, and I actually know the answer to that, but something else, let's say, what is the average for, or can I get into Harvard with a 1350 or something like that? And I may have an answer to that, but if I'm not 100% sure, or if I'm not updated with the latest news and latest statistics, then I will refer you to someone else. And I'm not ashamed in saying I don't know the answer. But if none of us know the answer, which hasn't happened ever, but if someone ever asks a question that none of us know, we will make sure to find that answer. And we will say we don't know, then we'll find that answer, whether we have to make a phone call to universities in the US or we have to read an article that costs us 1 hour of our time. We will make sure to find that answer for you. But when I visited test prep companies, they would give me an answer always. In the US, you can actually find a heavy amount of money for misinformation, but in Nepal, that doesn't seem to be the, no one seems to hesitate from giving misinformations and wrong answers. So we will definitely try to keep you updated with the most accurate information. Sorry, I got distracted here. We also provide fundamental classes on math and English to review the content. Obviously, without a solid content, it's very difficult to ace the test, right? And obviously, tips and tricks session are our strength. We actually do. I'm confident that we do a job much better than anyone else in the market, even not just in Nepal but worldwide. We do 30 minutes of personal meeting with everyone. This is not just for asking questions about the SAT. This is just to make sure that you are doing okay, because lack of self-care can actually translate into poor performance on the test. We want to make sure you are sleeping well and you're living a good lifestyle. You're not stressed about anything. Even if you're with my personal clients, I can actually sometimes be like a psychotherapist. I'm not a trained therapist, okay, don't get me wrong, but I try to listen to their fears, their stress and anxieties, and do my best to help them out. Sometimes even if something personal, such as you just went through a bad breakup and it's bothering you, it's keeping you from a good quality preparation, you can always, if you feel comfortable, you can tell us that in your 30-minute personal meeting with us, and we will make sure to help you out in any way we can. Okay, and we obviously do a anywhere from 5 to 6 mock exams and give you detailed feedback, because after all, this is endurance training. You have to be able to replicate what you want to do on the test, right? Okay, so with that, I think my job is done. I will still be here to answer any of your questions or talk about anything that I accidentally left out. But over to you, Sushant, sir.
Thank you so much, Tara sir. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, and thank you all the attendees. Now, it's my humble request. I would like all our attendees to rate this session.
And as I said before, we are always evolving. We are better today than we were tomorrow, and than yesterday, and we'll be better tomorrow than today. So we definitely appreciate any feedback. We don't claim to know everything, and we don't claim to be 100% perfect. So if you have any feedback that you would like to mention in writing, then definitely write to us. You will have our email towards the end. And as I said at the very beginning, if you are curious about my work, you can always visit www.startutor.com. And you can also obviously visit the acie.edu.np website for more information on ACI.
Okay, thank you everyone for responding and rating our session. Tarasan, on to the next slide, please.
Yeah, got it. Yes.
Now, to all our attendees, if you want to join our classes, full classes, there are various ways to reach out to us. You can always email us. The email address has been mentioned there, info@aci.edu.np, or you can actually fill a form and send it to us. I've just send you the link to the form that you have to fill it and send it to us. So if you really want to join our full classes, so these are the options. You can write to us. You can always log on to our Facebook page, or there is a direct form in your chat box. You can see I mentioned it there. You can fill it and you can send it to us to join our full classes. Okay, now as we mentioned, we are an abroad counseling organization. So if you need any counseling regarding your desired destination, so I mean, because of this COVID-19, there are a lot of issues going on. If you want to get any information, if you want to get any knowledge, or let's say any information about any universities in the desired destination, there are various ways to reach out to us. So the first thing that you can do is you can always write to us in our email address, that's info@aci.edu.np, or I'll be sending you a link in the chat box again. You can fill up that form and you can send it to us. Or there's another way, you can actually book an appointment. You can visit our website. It's www.aci.edu.np. So through that website, you can actually book an appointment. That would be an online appointment, or you can directly reach out through our Facebook page. So these are the few options that you can use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to again copy another link and send it in a chat box. So that would be one of the easiest way to reach out to us. So you can directly click on the link, you can fill the form and send it to us. So then we'll be giving you phone calls. So these are the different ways you can reach out to us if you need any counseling, as I mentioned you earlier, regarding any of your desired destinations. Thank you. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if there's any question, if there are any queries, because I can see a lot of you asking a lot of questions. Thank you so much. There's been a lot of queries. We're very happy to answer your questions. And before I end this session, as I mentioned about our star tutor Tara sir earlier, I would like him to say, I mean, what are the scores that his students been getting in the past, because he's been teaching for last 15 years. So I would like to mention the highest score that his students got. Tara sir.
So on the ACT, which is the most popular test in Chicago area where I worked most of my life, ACT is 90% the same with SAT. And on the ACT, one of my students got a perfect score of 36, which is equivalent to 1600, which is the full marks, in case you don't remember. So that's the highest marks for my student is actually a perfect score, which is more than what I scored. So sometimes the student can be smarter than the teacher, so which is fine. And he actually, his name is Quinn. He's from Chicago, western suburbs, and he got admission into Yale University. And my another student who scored the second best was Talia. She got accepted to MIT with a score of 1560. And several of my students have scored more than 1500. I cannot even count how many, but two students have scored more than 1550, and they both started at a much lower score. You know why? Because people who have been getting 1500 on their practice test already, they don't come to me for training, right? They do it on their own. So people who get, let's say, 1350 or 13 something below 1400, they come to the training to make sure that they get a 1500 plus score. So assuming that most people with high practice test score don't even need any coaching, I think two scores over 15, yeah, I'm very happy with my students' performances.
Great. So we have quite a few other questions, which I'll be bundling up and then putting it across to the management and as well to Tara sir as well. There's one question that's come from the students who just wants to know what should I take? Is SAT better, ACT better? What's the difference? If you could just help elaborate, if one has to choose between SAT and ACT, what should they choose? What are the considerations that they should make?
Okay, so I'll take that question. There's no right or wrong answer, but if you need the answer now, I would say the SAT, especially because there are more resources, more test prep options in Nepal and also online. ACT is very popular in the Midwest of the United States, which is mostly Chicago, Detroit, St. Louis area. If you're familiar with the map of the US, it's not very popular in the East Coast and the West Coast of the US. Although all the schools who accept the SAT will also accept the ACT, and there's additional section on the ACT called the science section, which is not today. You don't have to know science that much, but you have to be able to read and analyze the graphs and data. So if you're not a science student, please don't take the ACT, although you don't have to know any science. And on the ACT, the time constraint is even higher in the reading section. So if your reading is slower, ACT is bad news. Okay, although I don't want to you to think that SAT will be easier for the reading. It is almost as hard, but there are so many other factors. But if you have to decide, I don't know you very well. Well, I don't know you at all, so I cannot give you the exact solution. But I would stick with the SAT for now.
There's another question that's come in from a student who's asking whether SAT would help them get admission outside of the United States.
Well, I would defer that question back to you, Sabin sir, because I grew up, well, not grew up, but I worked primarily in the US, and I know for sure that universities outside of US do take the SAT, but I think because you've been counseling students so often, and you've been sending students abroad in many different countries. So what has been your experience so far?
So for SAT, while it becomes a mandatory requirement for most of the top-notch universities in the US, it's not a compulsion for the universities outside of the US. However, if you have given an SAT and you've got a good score, there's no harm in sharing that information with the universities. They will always help in terms of increasing your chances for admission, and they might, in some unique circumstances where your GPA has not been very good, but your SAT has been very good, they might take that as a point for understanding that you're academic-wise you are sound, and they might help you in your admission and possibly in some cases scholarships as well. The other question that's coming from students, Tara sir, and I think it would be, so today you've talked about few tricks and tips, and you helped us solve few questions, but how many tricks and tips are actually available in SAT?
That's a difficult question. Well, I don't have the exact count, and it depends really on how detailed of a class it will be. So as I haven't counted, so my guess is more than 200, and mostly in the math section. So I would say more than 150 in the math section, and probably 50 plus in the grammar and grammar and writing section. But it could be more than that. Really, I have different levels of density in terms of my classes. Some classes are extremely condensed. Some classes are highly elaborate that require 3.4 months of prep. So yeah, there's a huge collection of tips and tricks. But if I have to give you a number, I would say 200 plus.
Which pretty much relates to that. What kind of a material, or would you be providing us the tips and tricks? Because you mentioned about, I think you'll be sharing things on Google Doc. So what are the material, like the tips and tips that you have collated or that you used? Would you be sharing that in the full class? That's another question which pretty much relates to this.
Okay, so we have custom written notes that are written by me they are stored on Google Drive, and we upload the PDF on OneNote when we are conducting our classes. So if you're curious, I can open my OneNote and show you some. So this is a screenshot of the one of the practice tests from the College Board website, and I paste the screenshot here and go over the questions in detail. But before that, obviously, I'll go over these are the custom notes that I wrote, and I will explain the rules. And this is only for the verbal. There are corresponding notes for the quant section, math section as well. And apart from this, we share the official book from the College Board. We also share many other books that are designed specifically for the reading or English or for the math section. And if you are mathematically challenged, or if you're struggling with the math section, we will also share books that teach you math in detail. So those books are really good supplements to the classroom activity. And if you are a high-level student who is aiming for a 1400 plus score, then we will also share books that will challenge you more.
Thank you, Tara. So that's very helpful. There's another question that's come from a student. He says that he has not taken maths as a subject in his high school. I'm assuming that he is probably an A-level student. So will he have difficulty in giving SAT because he has not studied maths for the last 1-2 years? He studied only during class 10.
Okay, well, if I have to be honest, yes, you will have some difficulty, but the good news is the math preparation is almost like swimming. If you knew swimming in the past and you haven't swum for maybe a year or two, then it will take you a week or two to get the skills back. But if you have forgotten everything, and if you feel like everything looks like Chinese to you, then I suggest reading a really good book. There is a dummy series, SAT book for dummies series of books, or there are really elementary books on SAT. You can read them. Or if you're still having trouble, you can actually take even private lessons with someone who can teach you math. It does not have to be a SAT expert, but that option is necessary only if you don't understand any question at all. And there are very few, and hopefully you have just forgotten. You just need to recall some of the things that you have read in the past.
So there's another question from one of our students. Can SAT be waived? So I think I'll take that question. So most of the universities which are top ranked, or let's say Ivy League universities in the US would require SAT. However, because of the current COVID-19 situation, most of the universities who are accepting or who had made SAT as a mandatory requirement has waived off SAT requirement for the 2020 fall session and 2021 spring session, but that does not go for all the top-notch universities. Still, many top-notch universities, especially the Ivy League one, they still have the requirement for SAT for one to be eligible to apply to a particular course, undergrad program in that university. There's another question that's coming now. Is SAT only for high school students? If I understand your question right, you meant whether it's for undergrad program. Yes, it is. So SAT is a prerequisite or let's say a requisite for undergrad program. If you've already done your undergrad program and you're applying for a master's program, then SAT is not required. There are other tests such as GMAT and GRE which would be required for a master's program. Hopefully that answers your question. There's another question.
Sorry to interrupt, but I want to add that you don't have to have finished your high school or your 12th grade before you take the SAT. You can take it before you graduate. So in case the questioner wanted to know that.
Yes, and we always encourage the students to in fact start preparing for SAT while they're in class 11 and appear for it, if not in class 11, at least in the beginning of class 12 itself, so that if you don't score a good score, you can still reappear for it. And by the time you're finishing class 12, you should have your SAT score ready, so that you don't waste much time to apply to universities. And in fact, in most of the cases, you can usually get a conditional offer before you get your you finish your class 12. So that's what we will always encourage our students. There's another
Yes.
question, and we'll take 3 more questions in the interest of time, and we'll see if we can wrap this up by 12:30. This is the student who's asking: is it suggested to take SAT essay, the optional essay, or is it suggested that we do not take it?
Okay, short answer is yes. The long answer is yes, because your application will look a lot better if you have written the essay. But be careful. If you have written a mediocre essay and your personal statement has been written by a professional, they will know it's written by someone else. So if you have written the essay on the exam, just don't make the personal statement too good. Okay, just make it. I mean, you can still use editing services, but don't have someone else write the personal statement if you have taken the essay section.
Okay. This is for the students who have already started taking the classes in one of our partner school, who's already started the classes, but because we could not continue because of the exam schedule and the COVID-19 situation. For those students, for your information, we are already in touch with the management, and we have requested how we can restart the SAT program, SAT classes. So hopefully in a week or so, we'll get to some kind of an understanding or the modality of how we could restart those classes. And as soon as that is done, we'll inform all the students who have started the classes with us but could not continue, especially the ones who were teaching face-to-face classes in our partner school. So we will be restarting those classes very soon. But we're in conversation with your management, and as soon as we will work on the final modalities, we'll come back to you as soon as possible. Right. So there's another question, and I think this is pretty much the last question unless there are more questions that comes in. We talked about the process, which I believe you were referring to, that we start taking the mock exam and then we start moving ahead. So just to, and probably Tara sir could elaborate this a little further, but just to give you a little more perspective, the reason why we start with a mock test in the beginning is it's very important that we understand your level, and the instructor or the tutor understand what are your weaknesses and what are your strengths. We strongly don't believe in behaving, or let's say teaching the students in the same way as if you have a bunch of 30 students. We would like to know, let's say of those 30 students, probably there could be 5 of you who are very good at certain things and not very good at other things. So we would like to have that database available with us, so that while we're teaching, we know when to concentrate and which student to concentrate in, so that and later probably if you do opt for a one-on-one session, we would know where leverage. And also in terms of let's say if you're already if you're a 1250 score, we have to be realistic that okay, we can probably take it up to 1500, 1400, 1450. And if you are, let's say, a 900 student, then having an expectation to go up to 1550 may not be very realistic, right? So we need to understand that. So is there anything else, Tara sir, on the same issue if you'd like to share on the processes,
So,
why you taking mock and what we actually do? There's a question from the student.
So yeah, you gave a perfect answer on that already, but I would like to add that if we have enough students for 2 classes, we will do our best to filter out the students and form groups based on their mock test and their performances. And if we have enough students for 1 class, then once in a while we'll split the class into 2 groups and teach them separate things, just to focus on what they are most, what will help them most. And mock exam, as Sabin sir explained, is extremely important to be able to diagnose you. And I have a personal experience in that, because when I went to take voice lessons, the first thing the instructor asked me to do was sing something, and then he could diagnose my weaknesses and give me more advice. So diagnosis is extremely important.
Okay, so I think this is pretty much the last question that I just popped in. When will the full classes start? Has there anything been decided? So at the moment, as we mentioned, Sushant had shared the link to a Google Doc where you could express your interest. If you haven't enrolled for any of the classes, current student do not need to, will not require to, right? So you can enroll for and once we know the number of students, because we need to have a critical mass of students to start the classes, and once we have all the data, then we would decide on a suitable date, which will be agreeable to Tara sir and to most of the students, and then we will start accordingly. There's one question which is adjoining to this, Tara sir. How long usually are the SAT classes in terms of, if you could probably say, number of days or number of hours for a typical class tenure?
Yes, so the class length is mostly 1 hour. Sometimes I have 90 minutes classes, but I actually ask the students, if it's a small number, I ask them to sometimes give me feedback on the length of the classes. But if you're curious about the entire length of the full course, then the full course is 60 very condensed hours of tutoring, and that does not include the time we ask you to do mock tests, ask you to do problems in your own time and all that. So the overall impact is a lot more than 60 hours, but 60 hours is the tentative plan. That can change. It can be more than that or less than that, depending on the exact situation.
Sure. So I think these are the questions that we have, Sushant, and I think it has been a wonderful, I think very interactive participation in the poll and as well as the questions. And we hope that you enjoyed this session. You at least learned a few things, and then you are more excited to learn more new things from Tara sir. And we hope that we've done justice to this 1.5 hours that we spent with you. And during this difficult times of COVID-19. We are hopeful that we'll be able to these 1.5 hours was helpful, and then you at least learn something very new today. And we really look forward to most of the students for a full-length class soon as well. Over to you, Sushant.
Thank you, Savin sir, and thank you, Tara sir. Rightly mentioned, Savin sir. I mean, all the attendees, all the participation, I mean, they're wonderful because they participated in all the polls, they participated in everything. The question and answer session was very good. So at the end, I would like to thank all the attendees. I mean, thank you so much for attending this session. Thank you so much, Savin sir, and thank you so much, Tara sir. That's it. Have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you so much.